The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the bustling Stanford courtyard. Students filled the space, their voices a blend of laughter and chatter. Yet, amidst the lively atmosphere, a palpable tension crackled in the air. Sinclair Hawthorne stood at the center of it all, his sharp smile cutting through the noise as he openly mocked Oliver West. "Look at him, still trying to be a hero in that worn-out shirt," Sinclair sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. Laughter erupted from his friends, a chorus of privilege and superiority that echoed off the brick walls. Oliver stood a few feet away, his heart sinking under the weight of Sinclair's words. He clenched his fists, determined not to show the hurt that bubbled inside him. He had heard it all before, how he didn't belong in this world of elite students, how he was just an outsider trying to fit in. Yet there he stood, silent, the world around him spinning in a blur as he focused on his own resolve. "Just wait," he whispered to himself, a flicker of determination igniting deep within. "I will prove him wrong." In that moment, the contrast between them was stark. Sinclair, the golden boy, with his designer clothes and confident swagger, and Oliver, the struggling student, juggling 2 jobs while pursuing his engineering degree. Oliver's life was a constant balancing act. He worked late nights at the campus library and weekends at a local coffee shop, all while dreaming of innovations that could change the world. Each dream flared like a candle, fighting against the wind of doubt and ridicule that surrounded him. Sinclair's laughter rang out again, but Oliver pushed it aside. He could not let the elitism of Sinclair's circle crush his spirit. Instead, he felt a fierce determination grow inside him. "I will excel," he vowed silently, his heart racing with the challenge. "I will show them that I am more than what they see." As the day wore on, the shadows lengthened, but Oliver's resolve only hardened. The laughter of Sinclair and his friends faded into the background, replaced by the sound of his own heartbeat. He envisioned a future where his ideas would take flight, where he would not be defined by his humble beginnings, but by his intellect and creativity. Each step he took felt like a step toward that future, a future that was his to claim. Meanwhile, Sinclair reveled in the attention, the laughter fueling his sense of superiority. But beneath the surface, there was a flicker of uncertainty. Was this truly the person he wanted to be? The thought nagged at him, but he pushed it aside, too caught up in the moment to dwell on it. "Why do you even bother, Oliver?" Sinclair called out again, his tone mocking. "You'll never make it here. Just face it. You're not one of us." The laughter that followed stung, but Oliver held his head high, refusing to let Sinclair's words cut deeper. He turned away, clutching the strap of his worn backpack as he walked toward the library, a sanctuary where he could drown out the noise and focus on his studies. Inside the library, surrounded by the smell of old books and the soft rustle of pages turning, Oliver found solace. He settled into a quiet corner, pulling out his notes and textbooks. The words blurred for a moment as he thought of Sinclair's taunts, but he shook his head, clearing his mind. "I can't let this get to me," he muttered, determination flooding back. "I will rise above this." As he immersed himself in his work, the flickering candle of his dreams burned brighter, pushing away the shadows of doubt. Oliver knew the road ahead would be tough, but he was ready to face the challenges. One day, he would show Sinclair and everyone else that he was more than just a target for their mockery. With every formula he solved and every concept he mastered, he could feel the weight of their laughter lifting, replaced by the strength of his ambition. The sun hung high in the sky, casting warm rays over the Stanford campus. Students rushed to classes, their laughter and chatter filling the air. But in the midst of this vibrant atmosphere, a storm brewed for Sinclair Hawthorne and Oliver West. The university had announced a collaborative research project that would pair students from different backgrounds, and by some twist of fate, Sinclair and Oliver were thrown together. As they met in the sterile lab space, the air was thick with tension. Sinclair leaned against the counter, his arms crossed, a smirk on his face. "I can't believe we have to work together. This should be fun," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Oliver stood across from him, his jaw tight. "I'm not here to entertain you, Sinclair. Let's just focus on the project." He tried to keep his voice steady, but the resentment bubbled just beneath the surface. "Focus? You mean like how you focus on being the underdog?" Sinclair shot back, his eyes glinting with amusement. "Maybe I should take notes on how to fail gracefully." Oliver clenched his fists, fighting the urge to respond with anger. "Look, if you want to waste time, that's on you. But I have a vision for this project, and I'm not going to let your arrogance ruin it." The tension between them was palpable, each boy's self-image clashing violently. They struggled to share ideas, their conversations often turning into arguments. Sinclair would dismiss Oliver's suggestions with a wave of his hand, while Oliver fought to get his points across, feeling the weight of Sinclair's condescension. In a moment of silence, Sinclair's expression shifted slightly, revealing a hint of vulnerability. He recalled a memory from his childhood, a lavish birthday party filled with expensive gifts and fake smiles. His parents had thrown it for him, but as he stood in the center of it all, surrounded by friends, he had felt utterly alone. The pressure to be perfect had always loomed over him, the expectations weighing him down like a heavy cloak. "Do you even care about this project?" Sinclair suddenly asked, breaking the silence. "Or are you just here to prove a point?" Oliver paused, surprised by the unexpected question. "Of course I care," he replied, his voice softer now. "This is my chance to show what I can do. I want to create something meaningful, not just for grades, but for the world." Sinclair's brow furrowed as he considered Oliver's words. Maybe there was more to him than the stereotype he had painted. As they resumed their work, Oliver began to share his vision, outlining his ideas with a passion that Sinclair had not expected. The way Oliver spoke about innovation and change sparked something within Sinclair, a flicker of curiosity that he had buried under layers of pride. "Okay, maybe your idea isn't terrible," Sinclair admitted grudgingly. "But how do you plan to execute it? You can't just throw out concepts without a solid plan." Oliver smiled, encouraged by the slight shift in Sinclair's demeanor. "That's exactly what I was thinking. If we combine our strengths, we can create a solid plan. I can handle the technical aspects, but I need your insight on the market side." "Fine," Sinclair replied, his tone begrudging but less hostile. "Let's see if you can keep up with me." As the days passed, the initial hostility began to fade. The lab became a space for brainstorming and collaboration. Their discussions grew more constructive, with Oliver's resilience slowly chipping away at Sinclair's arrogance. Oliver's determination shone through, illuminating a path forward that both boys had not anticipated. One afternoon, as they worked late into the night, Sinclair found himself looking at Oliver in a new light. "You really care about this, don't you?" he said, almost to himself. Oliver looked up, momentarily surprised. "Yeah, I do. I want to make a difference, even if it's just a small one." Sinclair nodded, a flicker of respect igniting within him. Maybe this project could be more than just a competition after all. In that moment, a shift occurred between them, an understanding that began to bridge the divide of social status and preconceived notions. They still had a long way to go, but for the first time, they were not just rivals. They were two students, each with their own battles, ready to confront the challenges ahead together. The lab was unusually quiet, a stark contrast to the usual hum of activity. Oliver sat at his workstation, focused on a tricky experiment. He had been pushing himself harder than ever, determined to make a breakthrough. However, as he reached for a vial on the top shelf, he lost his balance and fell. The sound of glass shattering echoed through the room. Sinclair, who had been chatting with friends just outside the lab, rushed in at the sound. His heart raced as he saw Oliver on the floor, surrounded by broken glass. "Oliver!" he shouted, his voice a mix of surprise and concern. Oliver grimaced, clutching his arm, which had been cut during the fall. "I'm fine," he replied, though the pain was evident in his voice. Sinclair knelt beside him, and for the first time, he did not feel the urge to mock or belittle. Instead, he felt a wave of guilt wash over him. "What were you thinking?" Sinclair asked, his tone softening. "You should have asked for help." Oliver winced, but managed a small smile. "I thought I could handle it. Guess I was wrong." Sinclair bit his lip, feeling the weight of regret. He remembered all the times he had laughed at Oliver, all the moments he had pushed him down. Sitting there, watching Oliver in pain, made him question his choices. Did he really want to be that person? As the minutes passed, Sinclair helped Oliver stand, cautious of the cuts. "Come on, let's get you to the nurse," he urged, wrapping an arm around Oliver's shoulders for support. "I can walk," Oliver protested, though he leaned against Sinclair for balance. "Yeah, but you shouldn't have to," Sinclair replied, feeling a strange sense of responsibility. He felt a shift within himself. The nurse's office was a small room filled with medical supplies and the faint smell of antiseptic. Oliver sat on the examination table while Sinclair stood awkwardly by the door. The nurse quickly cleaned Oliver's wounds, her hands gentle but firm. "Just a few stitches, and you'll be good as new," she assured him. As Oliver winced during the procedure, Sinclair's mind raced. He thought about how he had treated Oliver, how he had let his privilege blind him to the struggles of others. "I'm sorry," he suddenly said, breaking the tense silence. Oliver looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For everything," Sinclair replied, his voice low. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was better. I didn't see you as a person." A silence filled the room. Oliver, still processing Sinclair's words, finally spoke. "It's okay. I know how it feels to be overlooked." Sinclair's chest tightened. "But it's not okay. I should have seen you for who you are, not just some rival to beat. I've been a jerk." The nurse finished with the stitches and stepped back, giving them a moment alone. Oliver took a deep breath. "We both have our struggles, Sinclair. I guess we're not so different after all." Sinclair nodded, looking down at his hands. "I want to change. I want to know you better, not just as a competitor, but as a friend." Oliver raised an eyebrow, surprised by the offer. "A friend? After everything?" Sinclair smiled weakly. "Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I mean it. I've been thinking about it for a while now. Maybe we can help each other." Oliver considered this, the vulnerability they had both shown in the past few hours shifting something in him. "Okay, let's start small. We can work together on the project, but you have to promise no more mocking." "Deal," Sinclair said, extending his hand. As they shook hands, a new understanding blossomed between them. They were still an unlikely pair, but the barriers that once divided them began to crumble. In that moment, Sinclair felt a sense of relief, a weight lifting off his shoulders. He realized that embracing his own humanity meant accepting others' struggles too. Oliver, on the other hand, found a flicker of hope. Perhaps their rivalry could evolve into something much greater. From that day forward, they would not only share a project, but also the stories of their lives, stories filled with dreams, pain, and the hope for a better future. As Oliver began to recover, the world outside his hospital room felt both distant and close. The room was filled with the soft hum of machines and the gentle light of late afternoon sun. Sinclair, who had taken it upon himself to visit more often, sat in the chair beside Oliver's bed. His presence was a stark contrast to the mocking laughter that had once filled the Stanford courtyard. "Hey," Sinclair said, breaking the silence. "How are you feeling today?" Oliver turned his head slowly, a faint smile appearing on his lips. "Better, I think. The doctors say I can go home soon." "Good, that's good," Sinclair replied, his voice softer than usual. "I've been working on our project. I thought you'd want to see what I have." Oliver raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Really? You've been working on it without me?" "Yeah," Sinclair admitted, scratching the back of his head. "I didn't want to fall behind, but I also wanted to make sure we're still on track. I know how much this means to you." As they discussed their project, the tension that once filled the air between them began to dissolve. Late-night study sessions became a norm. They would sit together, surrounded by books and notes, exchanging ideas and laughter. Oliver noticed how Sinclair's laughter was genuine now, free from the weight of superiority. One evening, as they pored over diagrams and calculations, Sinclair paused. "You know, I didn't realize how much I needed this," he said, looking at Oliver earnestly. "Working with you, it's different, in a good way." Oliver nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. "It's nice not to compete all the time. I think we both have something to learn from each other." But not everyone was pleased with this new bond. Sinclair's friends began to notice his time spent with Oliver. While they laughed at their own expense, Sinclair felt the pressure mount. One afternoon, he was at a cafe with his friends when the topic came up. "What's with you and West?" one of his friends scoffed. "He's just a charity case, Sinclair. You're better than that." Sinclair clenched his jaw, anger bubbling inside him. "He's not a charity case. He's smart and hardworking. You guys just can't see past your privilege." His friends exchanged glances, surprised by his outburst. "Come on, man. You can't be serious. Associating with him will ruin your reputation." "Maybe I don't care about my reputation anymore," Sinclair shot back. "I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not." The words echoed in his mind long after he left the cafe. Sinclair felt torn between loyalty to his friends and the respect he had developed for Oliver. He knew he had to make a choice. A week later, at another late-night study session, the topic came up again. "I had a rough day," Sinclair admitted, rubbing his temples. "My friends are really giving me a hard time about us working together." Oliver looked up, concern etched on his face. "You don't have to choose between them and me. I know how hard it can be to stand alone." "No," Sinclair said firmly. "I'm not going to hide anymore. I've seen the real you, Oliver, and I won't let them tear that down." The air between them grew heavy, with unspoken promises. They both knew this bond was something worth fighting for. A pivotal moment arose when they attended a campus event together. A peer, unaware of the tension, made a cruel joke at Oliver's expense. "Look at the scholarship kid trying to fit in," the peer sneered, laughter erupting from the crowd. Sinclair's heart raced as he felt the familiar urge to retreat, but instead, he stepped forward. "That's enough," he said, his voice strong. "Oliver is here because he deserves to be. He's done more than any of us could ever dream of." The laughter faded, replaced by murmurs of surprise. Sinclair's friends stared at him, shocked but silent. Oliver's eyes widened, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief washing over him. "Thank you," he whispered, feeling the weight of the moment settle between them. "Always," Sinclair replied, a smile breaking through his earlier tension. They both understood that this was a turning point, not just for their project, but for their friendship as well. The walls of class and status were beginning to crumble, revealing the foundation of respect and understanding they were building together. The day of the academic showcase arrived, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Students and professors filled the auditorium, eagerly waiting to see the innovative projects. Oliver West stood nervously at the side of the stage, his heart racing. He had spent countless nights working on this project, pouring his heart and soul into every detail. Next to him, Sinclair Hawthorne adjusted his tie, trying to appear calm, but the tension was evident in his posture. "Are you ready for this?" Sinclair asked, glancing at Oliver with a mix of concern and determination. Oliver took a deep breath, pushing down his nerves. "I think so. Just remember, we did this together." Sinclair nodded, a hint of pride flickering in his eyes. They had come a long way from their initial rivalry. The project was a testament to their hard work and unexpected partnership. As they stepped onto the stage, the crowd quieted. Oliver felt a surge of adrenaline. He began to explain their project, a groundbreaking engineering design that could change the way people used energy. His voice grew stronger with each word, and he could see Sinclair watching him with admiration. This design not only improves efficiency, Oliver explained, but it also makes renewable energy more accessible to everyone. We wanted to create something that could help our communities, not just the wealthy. The audience listened intently, and Oliver felt a wave of confidence wash over him. He glanced at Sinclair, who smiled back, clearly impressed. After Oliver finished speaking, Sinclair took a step forward. "I want to add something," Sinclair said, his voice steady. "Working with Oliver has changed my perspective on what success means. It's not just about grades or titles, it's about the impact we have on others." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Sinclair had always been the golden boy, the one everyone looked up to. For him to speak so openly about Oliver shocked the audience. Oliver felt a warmth spread through him, a sense of belonging he had longed for. As they walked off the stage, they were met with applause. The cheers echoed in Oliver's ears, and he couldn't help but smile. They had done it. They had transformed their project into something meaningful. "That was amazing," Sinclair exclaimed, clapping Oliver on the back. "I didn't know you could speak like that." Oliver laughed, the tension of the moment fading away. "I was just trying to hold it together. Thanks for backing me up." Sinclair's expression shifted slightly, a hint of seriousness returning. "You know, my parents are here today. I wish they could see things the way we do." Oliver nodded, understanding the weight of Sinclair's family expectations. "It's tough when they expect so much from you, but you can show them that there's more to success than just wealth." Sinclair sighed, looking out at the crowd. "I know. I hope they understand that I want to make a difference, not just follow in their footsteps." As they walked through the auditorium, Sinclair spotted his parents. They were dressed impeccably, surveying the room with an air of superiority. Sinclair's heart sank slightly. He felt the pressure of their gaze. "Sinclair," his mother called, waving him over. "Come, we need to talk." Oliver watched as Sinclair approached his parents, his expression shifting from excitement to apprehension. He could see the tension in Sinclair's shoulders. After a moment, he decided to give Sinclair some space and wandered toward the refreshment table. As he poured himself a drink, he overheard snippets of conversation from the crowd. Many were praising their project, and it filled him with hope. He had never felt so proud of his work, nor of the bond he had formed with Sinclair. After what felt like an eternity, Sinclair returned, his face a mix of frustration and relief. "They didn't get it," he said, shaking his head. "All they care about is how this reflects on our family name." "I'm sorry," Oliver replied softly. "But you know your worth. You've changed. You're not just your family's shadow." Sinclair looked at him, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thanks, Oliver. I really needed to hear that." As the showcase continued, Oliver felt a sense of possibility blooming within him. They had proven that their backgrounds did not define them. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also brought them together in ways they never expected. Standing side by side, they exchanged a determined glance, ready to face whatever came next. Oliver could finally envision a future where his dreams could flourish, unbound by the limitations of his past. The atmosphere in the auditorium buzzed with excitement as the academic showcase concluded. Sinclair Hawthorne stood at the podium, his heart racing. He glanced at Oliver West, who sat among the audience, a mix of pride and anxiety on his face. Sinclair took a deep breath, knowing this moment was crucial. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sinclair began, his voice steady despite the nerves, "I want to take a moment to acknowledge someone who played a huge role in our project, Oliver West." A hush fell over the room. Sinclair could feel the weight of stares from his peers, their expressions a blend of surprise and disbelief. He pressed on, determined to shatter the elitist norms that had always surrounded him. "Oliver's ideas and hard work pushed us to new heights. Without him, our project would not have been possible." Oliver blinked in shock, his heart beating faster. He had expected Sinclair to ride the wave of success alone, to bask in the glory without giving him credit. But here was Sinclair, challenging the status quo in front of everyone. The audience, initially silent, began to murmur. Some friends of Sinclair exchanged wide-eyed looks, while others nodded in agreement. Sinclair continued, "We need to recognize the contributions of all students, regardless of their backgrounds. True innovation comes from collaboration, not exclusion." His words hung in the air, a bold declaration that resonated with many. After the showcase, the atmosphere shifted. Sinclair and Oliver faced new challenges. As they walked out of the auditorium together, Sinclair felt a mix of exhilaration and fear. "Did you see their faces?" he asked, a grin spreading across his face. "I thought they were going to fall off their chairs." Oliver chuckled, feeling the tension melt away. "Yeah, I didn't think you had it in you to say all that." "I almost didn't," Sinclair admitted, his smile fading slightly. "But I realized it was time to stop hiding. It felt good to be honest for once." However, as they stepped outside, the reality of their new identities hit them. Sinclair's friends approached, their faces a mix of anger and confusion. "What was that about, Sinclair?" one of them demanded. "You just gave him all the credit. Are you serious?" Sinclair stood tall, feeling a rush of defiance. "I am serious. Oliver deserves this recognition. We worked hard together." "But he's not one of us," another friend scoffed. "You're throwing away your status for him?" "Status?" Sinclair echoed, his voice rising. "What good is status if it means ignoring talent? I'd rather be true to myself than fit in with you all. If you can't accept that, then maybe I don't need you as friends." The group stared at him, their expressions shifting from shock to betrayal. They muttered among themselves, clearly unsettled by Sinclair's newfound assertiveness. As they walked away, Sinclair felt a twinge of loss, but also a sense of freedom. Oliver watched the scene unfold, admiration swelling within him. "You really stood up for me back there. That was brave." Sinclair shrugged, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his voice. "I just realized that pretending to be someone I'm not isn't worth it anymore. I want to be authentic." Meanwhile, Oliver faced his own challenges. His family had always been supportive, but he sensed a shift in their expectations. After the showcase, they gathered in their modest living room, the smell of dinner wafting through the air. "Oliver, we're proud of your achievements," his mother said, beaming. "But what are your plans now? You need to think about your future." Oliver felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "I want to keep working on projects like the one with Sinclair. I want to innovate." His father frowned slightly. "But can you really make a living doing that? It's risky." "I know it's risky," Oliver replied, his voice firm. "But I want to pursue what I love. I don't want to just settle for a safe job. I want to create something meaningful." His parents exchanged worried glances, but Oliver stood his ground. He felt a newfound strength, a sense of identity that was no longer tied to his humble beginnings. As the evening wore on, both boys reflected on their journeys. Sinclair turned to Oliver, who was lost in thought. "What do you think will happen next?" he asked. Oliver looked up, a spark in his eyes. "I think we'll keep growing, together. We've only just begun." Sinclair nodded, a sense of hope blossoming within him. "Yeah, and whatever challenges come, we'll face them head on. We've learned that compassion and understanding can change everything." As they walked into the night, the stars twinkling above them, both Sinclair and Oliver felt ready to embrace the future. They understood that true wealth lay not in social standing, but in the richness of their shared experiences and the bonds they had forged. With every step, they stepped further away from their pasts and deeper into a future filled with promise. Share this story if you believe that true friendship and authenticity can break down barriers and challenge societal norms. Leave a comment about a time you stood up for someone or embraced your true self, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this.